The construction yard? What do you mean, sir?
I'm sending you to work on the new branch line, Thomas. Maybe that'll help you think about being a little less cheeky.
But sir, what about my branch line?
Branch line? I think that's where I'm meant to be working.
Ah, Ryan, my new tank engine. You're here.
New tank engine?
2015 was a big year for Thomas the Tank Engine. It marked the 70th anniversary of the franchise, Reverend Wilbert Awdry's first Railway series book, The Three Railway Engines, first being published in May of 1945. The original books were republished, some documentaries were produced, buses in New York City got a Thomas and Friends makeover, and Neil Patrick Harris yelled at some children.
I haven't spent hours watching the same episodes over and over and over with my kids like a broken record to have some stupid little tell me that I don't know as much about Thomas the Tank Engine than you do.
But the main event that year was two theatrically released specials that tied into the modern CGI iteration of Thomas and Friends. The first one, The Adventure Begins, was the true anniversary special, readapting the first two Railway series books and presenting a refreshed origin story for these characters. Very fitting. The second special, on the other hand, was less about humble beginnings and more about giving us one of the biggest adventures Thomas has ever had. Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure originally aired in theaters in the UK on July 17, 2015, and would eventually air on the Nick Jr. channel as a two-parter on July 23rd and July 25th, 2018. Now, I'm not sure if this special aired on the main Nickelodeon channel itself. I wasn't able to find any listings of such, but the main Thomas and Friends series did air on Nickelodeon between 2017 and 2019, so we're going to roll with it. The special was written by series head writer Andrew Brenner and was directed by David Stoughton, who, among other things, was one of the characterists making ugly politician puppets over on Spitting Image. Things are busy on the island of Sodor. A new branch line is being installed, and that means a lot of construction. Thomas the Tank Engine has gotten into a lot of trouble lately, racing buses and going too fast, teasing Gordon and causing an accident. So the Fat Controller, Sir Topham Hatt if you're nasty, puts him on construction duty as a way of punishment, with a new engine, Ryan, voiced by guest star Eddie Redmayne, taking over Thomas's line.
I used to be Sir Topham Hatt's #1 engine, but I'm not his #1 anymore.
The diggers get to work on the branch line, but some unstable ground gives way into an underground cavern, and Thomas discovers a fully intact pirate ship. Legend tells of a pirate captain who sailed his ship into the cavern to bury his treasure, but then the pirate captain lost the map, and now his ghost sails the sea to look for his ill-gotten booty. Ooh, secret spooky episode. Thomas doesn't really get any credit for finding the ship, so he's really starting to feel low. That is, until he stumbles upon a sailor named John, voiced by guest star John Hurt, and his little boat-on-wheels skiff. The two of them have been coming onto land every night in search for the lost treasure, and they convince Thomas to help them. Nice to finally have someone on his side, thinks Thomas.
You'll be really useful, you shall.
Especially if we lose the wind again. I'm always happy to be really useful, Sailor John.
But it is mighty strange that Sailor John and Skiff always have to return to the ocean before sunrise. Why is that? It's almost as if Sailor John isn't who he says he is. Like perhaps he's the ghost of the pirate captain. Oh! As I've laid it out here, you expect Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure to be a straightforward little adventure story. On one side, you've got the emotional journey of Thomas worried that he's becoming unwanted because of his antics, concerned that he'll be replaced by Ryan. On the other side, you have this Scooby-Doo plot about buried pirate treasure that ends with Thomas giving chase to the full-size pirate ship that has been rigged with train wheels for some reason. Absolute nonsense, but, it's fun nonsense.
If he's in trouble, he might need me by help.
Pirates!
And if that's all there was to this, I'd be calling this a fun time. Unfortunately, Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure bloats itself with characters old and new, and drags everything down to a slog. A huge chunk of the runtime is given to the steam shovel trained Marion just losing her goddamn mind. The special introduces 3 new characters, the miniature engines Mike, Rex, and Bert. They don't do much besides promise kids new toys, but Marion sees them the same way an unhinged idiot might see a little person and think, "Oh look, a leprechaun!"
What magical little engines! That's it! Magic! They must be. I bet they make wishes come true.
This sends Marion into a spiral. One of the diggers at the construction site has the same name as one of Marion's train friends, and she's like, "Oh, you must have made a wish and was magically turned into a digger." And to what end is all of this nonsense? Does she go, "Oh, I'm sorry that I got confused and disrespected your personhood, miniature engines"? Nah, not at all. She ends the episode just as confused and lost as when it started. A lot of the episode feels heavily padded to stretch the story out to an hour to justify airing it in movie theaters. There's some clever ideas, like a little action scene where the trains play hot potato with some lit dynamite. I do commend the showrunners for coming up with thrilling ideas like this for characters that are bound to their tracks and have no articulation outside of their pale faces. But it is for its own sake, it is for filling time, and I think it takes away from what should be the special's core ideas. Thomas begins the story feeling very self-important and proud, so you expect that when he's knocked down a peg and forced into a more, shall we say, working-class position, that he might get some perspective, that there is dignity in hard work, and or community is valuable, and or you should humble yourself a little. Thomas should be grateful. This franchise famously cask of amontillados any engine who pisses off the fat controller. But Thomas doesn't go through any of that. Thomas redeems himself, not by becoming a better person, if you'll allow the term, but by saving the day. It's morals as transaction. Did you do a bad thing? Then you need to do a good thing to balance it out. The good thing doesn't even have to be related to the bad thing. You saved the pirate treasure from falling into the hands of a not super nice guy. That totally makes up for your bravado and pettiness and carelessly causing accidents. This whole search for the pirate treasure plot doesn't really reflect the character plot. I suppose Sailor John does inflate Thomas's bruised ego a bit, calling him a very useful engine, but it doesn't go any further than that. The Sailor John plot mostly just hovers around half-considered arguments of ownership.
Oh, get my treasure back, Thomas!
No, Sailor John. That treasure didn't belong to you, and it didn't belong to the pirates. It was stolen. So it's going to the museum, and that's the end of it.
Because nobody collects stolen goods quite like the British Museum. What it comes down to is the writers of Thomas and Friends trying to come up with an hour of capital S stuff they can put on the movie screen, and it just does not come together as a cohesive whole. You could easily cut out half an hour of material here and just make this a subpar episode of the TV show, or even split the Thomas works in construction and Thomas searches for buried treasure plots into 2 separate episodes and polish them both into something good. As such, I can't really recommend Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure unless you're a big Thomas the Tank Engine fan and have already consumed most everything else in the franchise. It's got a lot of put the DVD on in front of the kids and distract them for an hour energy that I simply do not respect, even if some parents probably need that kind of thing. A few scenes are fun. The finale with the pirate ship on train tracks is just a wild visual, but it just doesn't work for me, especially not as a standalone movie. How it holds up to the rest of the modern iteration of Thomas and Friends is another question, one that we'll explore in a larger video somewhere down the line. For right now, this was just a sample.